Louisiana isn't just jazz, gumbo, and Mardi Gras beats. Beneath its bayous, behind its moss-covered oaks, and buried under 12 feet of silt and silence, there are entire towns that the world has completely forgotten. Communities that were drowned by floods the government caused on purpose. Towns that were poisoned by corporations that knew exactly what they were doing. Places where hundreds of people built their entire lives. And then one morning, everything they had was simply gone. If you are from Louisiana, you already know this state keeps secrets that run deeper than the Mississippi. And if you are watching from somewhere else, by the end of this video, you are going to wonder how any of this was allowed to happen. Today we are counting down 7 ghost towns of Louisiana that history tried to erase. And trust me, by the time we reach number 1, you are not going to believe this happened in America. Number 7. Longleaf, Rapides Parish. Imagine an entire town. Houses, sawmill, company store, machinery, equipment, all still standing exactly where it was left when the last worker walked away. Not a museum recreation, not a restored historic site. The actual thing. Weathered, rusting, and absolutely real. That is what you will find at Longleaf in Rapides Parish. 57 acres of preserved sawmill ghost town that represents the most complete surviving example of a longleaf pine lumber company town in the entire American South. And most people in Louisiana have never heard of it. Longleaf was built by the Crowell Spencer Lumber Company in the early 1900s to process the massive longleaf pine forests of central Louisiana. It was a complete company town. The company owned everything: the houses, the store, the church, the school, and of course the mill itself. Workers lived in company houses, bought from the company store, and built their entire lives around an operation that controlled every aspect of their existence. At its peak, the mill processed millions of board feet of lumber every year, feeding the construction boom of early 20th century America with timber pulled from the Louisiana forests. When the timber ran out, the company simply left. But unlike most company towns, the physical infrastructure at Longleaf was not demolished or stripped. It was abandoned in place, and over the decades a preservation effort took root that saved what remained. Today, the Southern Forest Heritage Museum occupies the site, 57 acres where you can walk through the actual machinery, the actual buildings, and the actual streets of a town that time preserved almost by accident. If you have never been here, you need to go. And if you have been here, drop a comment right now and tell us what it felt like to walk through it, because there is nowhere else in the South quite like Longleaf. Number 6. Rodessa, Caddo Parish. In the far northwest corner of Louisiana, up near the Texas and Arkansas borders in Caddo Parish, there is a town that went from nothing to everything to nothing again in the space of about a decade. Rodessa still exists today, barely, with a handful of residents and a few original structures still standing that remember what this place once was. But in the early 1930s, Rodessa was one of the most talked about places in the entire Gulf South, because Rodessa had oil. And when the word got out, the world came running. The Rodessa oil field was discovered in 1935, and within months the town, that had been a quiet agricultural community, was completely transformed. Workers flooded in from across the country. Hotels appeared almost overnight. Businesses opened on streets that hadn't existed the year before. The population exploded from a few hundred to several thousand in the space of months, and the streets of Rodessa took on the chaotic energy of a town that couldn't believe its own luck. Oil derricks rose from the flat Louisiana landscape in every direction, pumping money out of the ground and sending it through the local economy in a rush that felt, to the people living through it, like it would never end. But oil fields have a way of peaking quickly and declining faster than anyone is prepared for. By the early 1940s, the most productive wells were already showing signs of exhaustion. Workers began leaving for the next boom somewhere else. Businesses that had opened in a rush closed in an equal rush. The population crashed as fast as it had risen, and Rodessa was left with a handful of residents, a few original buildings, and the rusting remains of oil derricks that still stand today, like monuments to a fortune that came and went before anyone could figure out how to hold on to it. Does that remind you of anywhere? Because Rodessa is not the last Louisiana town on this list that was destroyed by something other than nature. Stop for just a second. You are 5 minutes into this video and you have already heard about towns that were built on dreams, people that were erased from the map. These stories are real. These people were real, and almost nobody is telling their stories. If that matters to you, if you believe forgotten people deserve to be remembered, hit that subscribe button right now, because we find these stories every single week, and we are just getting started. Number 5. Laurel Valley Plantation, Lafourche Parish. Stop what you are doing right now and imagine this. You are standing on a dirt road in Lafourche Parish, Louisiana. On both sides of you, stretching in both directions as far as you can see, are the original cypress wood cabins of the people who were enslaved here. Not reconstructions, not replicas. The actual buildings, weathered gray, their wood softened by 2 centuries of Louisiana humidity, their doors hanging open onto interiors that still hold the furniture, the tools, and the objects of daily life that were left behind when the last residents finally moved away. 50 to 60 of these structures still stand at Laurel Valley. It is the largest surviving complex of sugar plantation buildings in the entire United States. And standing in the middle of it is one of the most uncomfortable and important experiences Louisiana has to offer. Laurel Valley was established in the 1790s as a sugar plantation in Lafourche Parish, growing into one of the most productive operations in Louisiana's sugar economy. The plantation worked hundreds of enslaved people across thousands of acres, producing sugar that fed a national market that never asked too many questions about how it was made. After emancipation, many of the same families who had been enslaved here continued working the land as sharecroppers. Different legal status, similar economic reality, same cabins, same fields, same parish. The plantation continued operating in various forms well into the 20th century before finally closing and falling into the state of preserved abandonment you find today. The cabins that remain are extraordinary in their completeness and their silence. Walking among them, you are not looking at history from a safe distance, you are standing inside it. The commissary where workers were paid in company scrip still stands. The sugar mill ruins still dominate the landscape. And the cabins themselves, row after row after row, each one a complete and specific record of a life that was lived here, that mattered here, and that history has largely refused to properly acknowledge. If you are from Louisiana and you have never visited Laurel Valley Plantation, why not? And if you have visited, tell us in the comments what it felt like to stand there. Because some places demand that you feel something. This is one of them. Number 4. Frenier, St. John the Baptist Parish. Before we get to number 3, take a breath. Because what you are about to hear in the next few entries is not the story of towns that faded slowly or were bypassed by railroads or dried up when their industries moved on. What you are about to hear is what happens when Louisiana's geography turns against the people who trusted it. And it starts with a single night in October 1915 that wiped an entire town off the face of the earth. Frenier was a small fishing and farming community on the western shore of Lake Pontchartrain in St. John the Baptist Parish. Its residents were trappers, fishermen, and farmers who had built their lives around the extraordinary natural resources of the Louisiana coast. People who understood the water, respected the weather, and had survived countless storms by reading the signs that nature provided. They had been here for generations. They knew this land the way you can only know a place when your family has lived and died on it for 100 years. On the morning of October 1st, 1915, they had every reason to believe that this particular storm would be like all the others. It was not. The hurricane that struck the Louisiana coast on October 1st, 1915, was a catastrophic Category 4 storm that drove a wall of water across Lake Pontchartrain with a force that gave the residents of Frenier almost no time to react. The death toll at Frenier alone was staggering. Most of the town's population was killed in a matter of hours. What the water didn't take, the winds destroyed. By the time the storm passed, Frenier was gone. Not damaged, not flooded, not in need of rebuilding, but simply gone. Only a small cemetery survived, its headstones still standing today in the undergrowth near the lake, marking the names of people who woke up that morning planning for tomorrow. Are you still watching? Good, because what comes next is worse. Number 3. Bayou Chene, St. Martin Parish. Deep in the heart of the Atchafalaya Basin, accessible only by boat, there is a place where approximately 500 people once lived in one of the most remarkable and self-sufficient communities in Louisiana history. They built their homes on stilts above the water. They raised their floors to rise and fall with the floods. They kept their livestock on specially built rafts when the water came up. They were trappers, fishermen, moss pickers, lumberjacks, and farmers who had learned, over generations, to live inside one of the most challenging environments on Earth and to thrive there. Today, Bayou Chene lies under 12 feet of silt. And the reason it is there is because the United States government decided that protecting New Orleans from flooding was more important than the lives and homes of the people who lived in the basin. Bayou Chene was settled in the 1830s by families who chose the Atchafalaya Basin not despite its isolation, but because of it. The post office established in 1858 connected them to the outside world, and the community grew steadily through the 19th century into a fully functioning town with churches, a school, a store, and the kind of deep social fabric that only forms when families live close together for multiple generations. They flooded occasionally. That was understood as part of the deal, but they always rebuilt and always stayed. The Great Mississippi Flood of 1927 was more severe than anything they had experienced, but even then the community came back, patched itself up, and prepared to continue. What they could not survive was the federal government's response to that flood. The 1928 Flood Control Act authorized the construction of the Atchafalaya Spillway Levees, a massive engineering project designed to protect downstream cities by routing floodwater through the basin. Bayou Chene was directly in the path of those levees. The community that had survived 100 years of natural flooding was now condemned by an act of Congress. The school closed in 1953. The post office closed in 1952. The last residents loaded their houses, literally dismantled them, and loaded the lumber onto barges, and moved to Plaquemine and St. Martinville. And the water rose, and Bayou Chene disappeared under 12 feet of silt and silence. A community of 500 people, built over a century, erased in a government decision that most Americans have never heard of. If that makes you angry, it should. And if you think that's the most shocking thing on this list, you haven't heard number 1 yet. Number 2. Fort Macomb, Orleans Parish. East of New Orleans, where Highway 90 runs along the edge of the wetlands toward the Mississippi state line, there is a brick fortress half swallowed by marsh grass and dark water that most people drive past without a second glance. Fort Macomb has been standing since 1828, nearly 2 full centuries of Louisiana history compressed into crumbling brick arches, flooded moats, and dark tunnel corridors that filmmakers have used to represent the darkest corners of the human imagination. HBO filmed the season finale of True Detective here. Beyoncé filmed part of Lemonade here. And yet this extraordinary ruin sits on the edge of a highway, closed to the public, slowly dissolving into the Louisiana wetlands, largely unknown to the people who pass it every week. Have you ever driven this road? Have you seen it without knowing what it was? Because Fort Macomb has one of the most layered histories of any structure still standing in Louisiana. Fort Macomb was constructed between 1822 and 1828 as part of America's third system of coastal defense, a network of 42 forts built in the wake of the War of 1812 to protect the country's vulnerable waterways from naval attack. Designed by the French military engineer Simon Bernard and built to guard the Chef Minta Pass into Lake Pontchartrain, it was considered among the most strategically important defensive positions on the Gulf Coast. The fort was equipped with 78 heavy guns and howitzers, garrisoned by the U.S. Army, and considered essentially impregnable to the naval technology of its era. Confederate forces seized it at the start of the Civil War in January 1861. Union forces retook it the following year when New Orleans fell. The 1st Louisiana Native Guards, one of the Union Army's first all-black units, served here. Every side of the American story passed through these brick walls. The fort was decommissioned in 1871 after a fire destroyed the wooden barracks 4 years earlier. Improved weaponry had made masonry forts obsolete, and Fort Macomb was simply left, not demolished, not preserved, but abandoned to the Louisiana climate, which has been doing what the Louisiana climate does ever since. Hurricane Katrina hit it in 2005. Hurricane Isaac hit it in 2012. Saltwater intrusion, tidal erosion, and a century and a half of subtropical decay have left the walls cracked and the arches unstable. The state of Louisiana owns it. The state of Louisiana has done almost nothing with it. It sits there today, behind a fence on the edge of Highway 90, one of the most atmospheric and historically significant ruins in the entire Gulf South, slowly dissolving into the marsh while the cars drive past. Some places deserve better than what they got. Fort Macomb is one of them. Pause for just a second. You have just heard about towns drowned by floods, wiped out by hurricanes, and erased by government decisions. Every single person in every single one of these places was real. They had names. They had families. They had plans for tomorrow. And most of them have been completely forgotten. If this kind of storytelling matters to you, if you believe these people and these places deserve to be remembered, hit that subscribe button right now. We find these stories every single week. We are not going to stop. And what you are about to hear in the next 2 entries is the reason this channel exists. Number 1. Morrisonville, Iberville Parish. In Iberville Parish, Louisiana, in the corridor between Baton Rouge and New Orleans that residents now call Cancer Alley, a name that tells you everything you need to know about what happened here, there is a cemetery. It is the only thing left of Morrisonville. Not the houses, not the church, not the school or the streets or the gardens that families tended for over 100 years. Just the cemetery, with its more than 100 graves and its family ties going back to the 1870s, sitting on land that a chemical corporation owns and that the state of Louisiana has declared uninhabitable. The people who are buried here built something extraordinary in this spot. And what was done to them, what was allowed to be done to them, is one of the most disturbing stories in modern American history. Morrisonville was founded in the 1870s by formerly enslaved people who had been freed from the plantations near Plaquemine at the end of the Civil War. They established the Nazarene Baptist Church in 1889 under Reverend Robert Morrison, organized a community, built houses, educated their children at a time when there was no public education available to African Americans in Louisiana, and created something that had every right to last forever. This was a community that had survived slavery, survived Reconstruction, survived Jim Crow, and survived a forced relocation in 1921 when an Army Corps of Engineers levee project displaced their original settlement. They moved, rebuilt, and kept going. They were not people who gave up easily, because they had never been given the option. In 1958, the Dow Chemical Company built a vinyl chloride production facility on land directly adjacent to Morrisonville. Vinyl chloride is a colorless cancer-causing gas. By the 1980s, it had found its way into the wells that supplied Morrisonville's drinking water. The plant's loudspeaker announcements, scheduling, safety alerts, evacuation notices, could be heard inside people's homes. The green belt that was supposed to separate the factory from the community had been bought up by Dow piece by piece until the plant surrounded the town on multiple sides, covering 1,400 acres. In 1990, Dow Chemical bought Morrisonville, the entire community, house by house, forcing the remaining residents to relocate to Morrisonville Estates and Morrisonville Acres, the names they gave the new subdivisions where the displaced community was resettled. The state of Louisiana declared the land uninhabitable. The houses were demolished. The church was demolished. The streets were erased. And where a community of freed people had stood for over 100 years, a community that had survived everything America threw at them, there is now a chemical plant that has never been held fully accountable for what it did. The cemetery remains. Dow Chemical still operates there today. And the stretch of river between Baton Rouge and New Orleans is still called Cancer Alley by the people who live along it and are still getting sick. Think about that. Think about who built Morrisonville, what they survived to build it, and what was done to it in the end. Some stories don't have clean endings. This is one of them, and it is still happening. Those are 10 ghost towns of Louisiana. 10 communities that were real, that were full of people who had names and families and plans, and that are now either gone completely or standing in ruins that most people drive past without a second glance. From a lumber town that emptied when the trees ran out, to a freed slave community that was poisoned by a corporation and erased from the map, Louisiana's hidden history is darker, deeper, and more important than most people realize. If any of these towns made you feel something, if any of these stories made you angry or sad or determined that these places deserve to be remembered, drop it in the comments below. Tell us where you're watching from. Tell us if you knew any of these stories before today. We read every single comment. And subscribe, because next week, we are going deeper into the American South, and the stories we have found are going to stop you cold.